always get this name wrong, the Building Advisory Subcommittee. July 16th at 6 p.m. First business is call to order, that being done. Second item on the agenda is some housekeeping stuff, just making folks aware. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome our new member, Steve Ferrara, member of the community, who applied for the position, along with a number of other folks, and came through as exceedingly qualified, and we welcome you, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you very much. Look forward to contributing.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Rob. Just in time.
Sorry, got stuck in traffic.
Oh, as did a couple of us, yeah. Secondly, just because we got a whole lot of new faces around here, some who are on the committee, some who are not, some who are vendors and contributing to our cause here, we'd like to go around the table and just say briefly your name and who you are representing, okay? Starting at this end, if you would.
Hi everyone, Matt Abraham with Peregrine Group, mostly working with the capital improvement side of the project.
Hello everyone, I'm Tina Greco. I'm with Perkins Eastman, the architecture firm for Wickford Middle School.
Ashley Prester, DBVW. I'm filling in for Ed Safune.
Here with Michael.
Here with Michael.
Michael Viveris, Senior Principal with DBVW Architects, and we're involved in the capital improvement project.
Robert Cakes, I'm the Vice Chair of the School Committee.
My name is Chris Murphy. I'm the Director of Facilities and Safety for the school district, and also the chairman of this particular committee.
Megan Riley, I'm on the school committee, and I'm also a co-chair with Rob on the building advisory committee.
Steve Ferrara, I'm the new member of the building subcommittee.
Rob Meznati, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
Ralph Mollis, I'm the town manager here in North Kingstown.
Dave Flanagan, Principal, Wickford Middle School.
Wendy Petrucci, I work under Chris Murphy, and I take the notes.
Erica Schechter with Peregrine Group, supporting on the middle school project.
Sam Bradner, Peregrine, I'm the project executive for the project management team, working with both Matt and Eric.
Super. Thank you all. Very good. Next agenda item is the approval of meeting minutes from May 7th. We had met last meeting, and there were some adjustments that had been made that were not received, so we tabled this last time. I sent out a note to everybody a few days ago asking for any last-minute updates or edits to the meeting minutes from 5/7. Having, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, received no further updates, we're gonna proceed and accept the minutes, vote to accept the minutes that were sent out to the committee on Monday of this week.
So I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as they stand right now for May 7th? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, that passes. Meeting minutes accepted for May 7th. Next is the meeting minutes for the June 4th meeting. Same situation exists. We sent out the meeting minutes. There being no edits or recommendations for changes, do I hear a motion to accept the meeting minutes for June 4th?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor of accepting the minutes as they stand for June 4th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. That is some housekeeping stuff out of the way. Number 3, public comment. Is there any, Wendy, do you know if anybody signed up for public comment, or did our public comment at all? No, not today?
Mary signed up. Mary.
We have one.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I just wondered
Thank you.
how the changes in our construction start dates coupled with the current federal administration's accelerated phase out of energy rebates and credits will affect our ability to benefit from these incentives for the new middle school. And I just wondered if y'all are keeping track of that. I know it changes sometimes day to day, but just wonder if it still looks positive to be able to get any rebates from the federal government.
So, I would say we don't usually answer, sometimes we do, but that's a pretty low.
Thank you for inquiring, Mary. Number 4, update for the CIP summary update. This update is going to come to us from our friends at DBVW, who have done a fair amount of work walking around the school and are going to provide us their update and comment.
Good evening. Yeah, good evening,
Mike
everyone.
Viveros.
Mike Viveros. So maybe just go to the next slide, Sam. So we started our analysis a little bit. We took a look at the capacity of the various elementary schools. And you probably can't see this back from where you're sitting, but Stony Lane, for example, as it relates to 95% utilization is a little bit under, so it has fewer students than you could have in the school. Forest Park is the same. Quinnesset is also a little underutilized, if you will. Fishing Cove, however, happens to be over, and Hamilton is slightly under. Next slide, please. And I'm going to touch on a number of things sort of all at the same time. As we dove into this project, of course, we looked at the work that had been submitted previously in terms of the, the work that would be included for the eventual, with the 61 million, if you will, 64 million. And as we walked through the schools, I think one thing that we noticed was that many of the schools are quite tired, 50, 60 years old, and they're quite tired. So, and then as we walked through, there was not only the work that was envisioned and submitted as part of the prior part 2, but we noticed other work that we thought also needed to be accomplished as it would relate to code and other issues. What you're looking at here is a plan of Quinnesset. So the plan has been to in the open classroom areas, a significant part of the plan was to build walls and create, traditional classrooms in the open classroom plan. As we walk through the building, and you can see that kind of all highlighted in what we're highlighting in sort of pinkish light red are is a sort of classroom area, the library, and what we also think is that the restrooms there also need significant work. In the tan, if you will, as we looked at the nursing suite and other areas, we really noticed that improvements were necessary in order to comply with handicap codes and accessibility codes. And I'm just going to keep this at a high level as we click through. So now you're looking at Stony Lane, very similar. It's really the same school with different additions, if you will. So it has it's a very similar situation in terms of the improvements necessary. And what we do want you to notice on both of these schools is the amount of pink and tan relative to white, right? Because really what it starts to show is you're impacting a very significant part of the overall floor plan of the school.
So the colored part would be impacted by any construction?
Yes, it would, yes.
Well, actually, there are some notes in the white areas in some of the schools. Some have sprinklers, some don't, so we have different code requirements that we would have to
Yeah.
meet.
And specifically, the large pink areas in those two buildings, these are for buildings that currently do not have walls in them, and that's primarily the focus of those areas as far as the construction needed.
That's right. I mean, as we envision creating the improvements necessary to create the individual classrooms, essentially what it means is stripping everything back to structure. Removing all finishes, all electrical, ceilings, lighting, stripping everything back to structure. And then along with building the classrooms, there are improvements that would be necessary, related to doors, natural light, and other things. So it's not only the interior work, but it's also other things that have to happen around the perimeter.
So
And then
obviously.
as Ashley mentioned, in the white area, as you start to create new classrooms under new code, we would have corridors that would either need a sprinkler system to not have 1 hour rated walls, not require 1 hour rated walls. Or if there's no sprinkler system, such as in Stony Lane, we would need to create 1 hour, the new corridors would be 1 hour rated, and then they would need to egress out to 1 hour rated corridors. So we'd have to go into the existing corridors and make improvements. If you think about it, you wouldn't want to create 1 hour corridors and exit into half-hour corridors. You'd want to maintain the required. The hour rating, right? So we'd have to go into those corridors in white, to Ashley's point, and, look at the glazing, look at the doors, deal with door labels, closers, and all the things that happen. or put a sprinkler system in, which is what we often do when we go into older schools, and that sprinkler system helps, you know, you kind of get relief on many of the things that we're talking about, and sprinkler systems are quite common in a modern school today. So it's the way to go.
So having to make all those upgrades with the glass and the doors, and often you're saying a sprinkler system is more economical to install, and just
It can be.
leave everything else as is.
It can be, yes.
It depends on oftentimes what kind of, how far the water service is, because you're usually trenching the entrance road to get a new water service in. So it depends on every property.
Okay.
But we'd have to go in order to create, you know, even in those corridors, to create 1 hour corridors, we have to look at how the walls end at the ceiling, we have to look at doors, glass, closers, you know, which is, in corridors like this, it's not a huge amount of work, because if you look, the corridors relative to the overall building is not very long. But all these things add up, particularly as you spread that across 5 or 6 schools, right? It all just adds up.
Sure.
Next. So with Fishing Cove, you know, the idea is to create classrooms in the open classroom areas, and you can see that highlighted again in light red or pink. It looks mostly pink to me today. And then we think there are other issues with the restrooms. We think once you were doing, let's say, the plan on the top, the 2 stacked plans, yeah, thank you. The restrooms in that area have issues. The elevator is in the stair, which is a problem, so we'd have to make other code improvements as it relates to that floor plan. So it's no different than, as I mentioned, in the previous school. We'd basically go in, strip it all back to structure, and start over in order to, you know, that's pretty much what would be required. Next plan. So Hamilton is much more, in terms of the goals here, and then in the near term, I think the part 2 was more limited in the improvements envisioned. But I will say, as we walked into the school, you know, we did notice the number of deficiencies. I don't want to get into all today, but the school is a tired school, frankly. It's a quite tired building as you look at the envelope, you look at the cabinetry, the windows. It's a relatively tired building. Next. Yeah, so Forest Park, you know, obviously we'd be doing roofing here, and there's also a goal to add gymnasiums to certain schools. We're going to touch on that in a minute. Keep going, and I'm going to just kind of get to the key point. Davisville Academy, you know, similar situations in terms of, again, a fairly tired building, needing significant improvement, not nearly all of it being addressed in the prior ask. And then Davis Middle School, this involves, you know, locker improvements, you know, installing walls to create individual classrooms, and other potential improvements. High school roofing. As we looked at all of this, you know, we thought it would be good to try to understand what it means from a cost perspective, to balance it against the available funds. And as we do that, it's clear to us, we have inspected all of the roofs. The roofs clearly all need to be replaced. We don't even see how they could be, you know, try to buy another 5 years out of them or something. There's a lot of leaking, and the roofs are quite tired, and we couldn't agree more that the roofs need to be replaced. Now, as you get into roofs start to deal with mechanical equipment that's mounted to the roof. You start to deal with fascia and other issues. We add insulation as we replace roofs, which adds to maybe the thickness around the building. So roofs aren't just roofs, is really the key point that I'm trying to make there. And as we thought it would be useful to try to do a quick analysis of what we think the cost for just the roofing is in very high level. Taking the square footage of all the various roofs, including the high school, you know, we've totaled up that we think that basically the subcontractor price for all of that work, outside of phasing and other things, would be somewhere around $11.6 million just for roofing.
In today's cost.
In today's cost, so not escalated, you know, we're not projecting that number's not projected out, you know, years. As it relates to the interior renovations that I showed, and this is just for Quinnesset, Stony Lane, and Fishing Cove, you know, where we looked at, you know, the kind of substantial gutting and creating the new walls and major renovations. As we look at that, and I could give you the numbers on the slide here are by school, but the total for the schools in our very rough order of magnitude estimate is around 26 million or $25.75 million.
Michael, if I may, though, I mean to,
Yep. Yep.
but that only includes those three schools, it does not include Hamilton, Forest Park, Davisville, and high school.
You are correct.
Okay, I'm just, okay.
It doesn't include all the, the exterior work and all the numerous capital improvement projects. You know, it does include the work at Davisville, various educational improvements that had been envisioned, site work, handicap accessibility issues at sidewalks and the like. If we total, and the other thing that the numbers above don't include is it does include, those are just the hard construction costs. And we would typically add, let's roughly now, 15% for general conditions, general requirements, bonds, insurance, overhead and profit. We would add another 5% or so for a phasing premium, because the scope of the projects for Stony and Quinnesset, for example, they can't be done over one summer. So they're gonna have to be phased. So that's, contractor mobilizing, getting set up, doing work, a certain amount of work. You get to the end of August and you're knocking down maybe you could do some work, but these projects are gonna need to be phased, and that adds cost. So there's a 5% phasing premium, and then escalation, which is a whole nother rough issue, but, escalation is gonna be somewhere around 3.5% to 4.5% per year, and even that escalates. So as you're talking about doing a project over the next 5 years, you need to be mindful of escalation costs, because inflation is with us and always has been, that doesn't seem like it's going to change. So if I total all of that, using 25% for the item 3 that you're seeing there, below item 3, the general conditions and the like, the roof replacement and interior renovations equals, on those 3 schools, comes to $37.345 million. Add another $9.35 million for the 25%, and that equals $46.681 million. Okay, I'll just use $46.7 million. You have a total of $51,200,000 available for hard costs under the RIDE program. So that leaves $4.5 million for Davisville, educational improvements, gyms, site work, and all these other things that you might want. So in our analysis, what this is saying is that the scope the scope envisioned, or scope hoped for, let's say, is probably more than can be achievable under the present funds. So then we ask ourselves, what are other ways to look at this? Any questions? Maybe I said a lot, so.
So I just have one, so in addition to the fact that, it appears the original wish list by the private vendors is much more expensive than we envisioned, I'm also hearing that there seems to be a concern that we're spending some good money after bad because these buildings are tired. And so when you look at the money that you're spending for these 3 schools only, so we have a problem with, so with according to this budget, we do have a glaring problem, at least in my opinion, but I think I've heard it from others, is that now we have the have and the have-nots. We have Whitford Middle is brand new without any money going into Davisville. That's a real that's a problem for me. And then also I'm hearing that these buildings are tired, so you're gonna be spending $26 million on buildings that in reality are pretty much gutting. It's not just putting up walls, and we still have the same buildings.
And just to be, so that I'm clear, we're not saying you would do the walls in the classrooms or how you would spend the money. We're just saying if you did spend the money this way, this is what would be left.
Right.
Right, so, and to your point, good money after bad, we do feel that many of these schools are quite tired, and spending money or adding to them, thinking about a 10 or 20 year plan, the life of a building, let's say, right? We do think that spending a significant amount of money on them might not be money well spent.
Can I just add a couple,
Please.
comments and clarifications?
Said a lot.
And I think, so DVVW and Peregrine are relatively new to the group, but we've been in massive ramp-up mode for the last 6 weeks now. And I think the work that DBVW has done in a very short period of time is nothing short of exceptional from our perspective as pros in the field. These numbers are still just order of magnitude, I think as Michael said, I just wanted everybody to understand, we haven't even estimated this work yet, right? So we've gotten a lot of data very early, just based on the walking through, having all the disciplines walk through, and then applying some kind of market numbers to what we think these costs will be. It will change when we actually do the estimating steps. It'll become more refined, all those items that Michael talked about, overhead profit, insurance, escalation, all those things will be much more refined, a little bit more scientific, not that this wasn't a great first pass, but I think we've gotten tremendous output in a short period of time. And I think just to kind of continue to pull that string a little bit, you know, there's a laundry list of things that we know were at least originally kind of expected or brought to the table for the scope for the stage 2. There are often times also where you'll see an oversubscription at the stage 2, right? So you ask for more, because really stage 2 is purely a funding exercise, right? You're going to ride, you're trying to establish how much you'll get in housing aid reimbursement, and then typically how does that tie back to say what your overall borrowing is for your bond or other sources of funds that might come in. So I think it's not uncommon that you would not put all this stuff in or some modified list when we get to the final submission in September. But I think this is just the first kind of look into how we're looking at it and how DBVW is looking at it and the lens that they're looking at to say, okay, does it make sense to invest in building A if building A has 10 other deficiencies that weren't even thought about in the original analysis? And again, very iterative. We don't have all the answers today, but I think it's an opportunity at least to kind of talk about this with the building, the committee here and say, you know, this is, we're gonna talk about this at the next meeting in a lot more detail, and each meeting's gonna build a little bit of detail as we get to September for the addenda that's gonna be submitted.
And
Yep.
so,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Sam, and Michael, to be clear, the process then is that we need to get these CIP projects to ride during the stage 2. In terms of the cost estimates and the priority levels that ultimately the school committee places on them with the recommendations from you all, our internal meetings, a lot of the feedback from this building subcommittee. The priority levels and the costs don't come until after the stage 2 September 15th submission. So
You'll have to have some costs associated with the submission.
no, I mean from your end, but I'm sorry, in terms of what we decide to use the $60 million
Correct.
on,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that for everybody's
No,
knowledge,
that's important,
so-
super important, I think, to
Yep.
make that point.
Right,
Yes.
right, so that everyone knows the process, it's not like we're rushing, we have to get all this information, all the estimates, and a decision made by September 15th, because that's just not gonna happen, and we also haven't prioritized yet. So the priorities come after September 15th, and then we decide what we're gonna use our money on.
Correct. Yeah, so you could have, I'm gonna make it up, you could have $90 million worth of estimated work that actually gets submitted for stage 2. You know you only have 60, 64, whatever the number is. And then it's, I think
Kind of a
Brian would
5-year
wanna see
plan.
some indication of priority, but I don't, you're not held to that. They're gonna say, look, you're approved for this, all this stuff is approved, now you guys are gonna have to kind of sort it through. So I think we're gonna have to have some sense, but I think that's also gonna be important as we meet with RIDE on these bi-weekly meetings to say, okay, RIDE, please understand that this is, a lot of this is shifting sands, and the community and the ownership team are trying to figure out and navigate through, all right, we have this much stuff, we only have this much money. It's gonna take us time even after the stage 2 submission to say, where is the priority gonna be for those precious dollars?
And when we get into the stage 3, especially in early schematic, they're gonna look for a 5-year capital improvement plan. They're gonna look at what you plan on doing with this bond money, but then also they're gonna look at the future. When you draw the line at wherever your bond money can cover, anything below that, they say, okay, well, we've identified this as a need, how are you gonna do it later? And it doesn't have to be well-defined, but you say, we're gonna go after another bond, or we're gonna do it we're gonna tick at it, a few million a year.
Yeah, with capital or whatever.
Yeah, or capital, or emergency funds, however it works. And I think,
But it's not uncommon to have more on the list than you can
Yeah,
afford.
right.
yes.
Yeah,
Where's our fund?
not uncommon at all,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, I was just saying to Maggie, it begs the question, what Aaron just, Ashley just said, what is the town's plan for these buildings, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12, 20 years out? Do we wanna just put a few $1 million in to keep a building afloat? Or are we gonna drop 20 million on it to make sure that building is still there in 20 years? Because we count on that building, the people who live in that area need that building. So that's a decision we have to make as a town.
So if I may, I would like to propose a motion, but in a different order, if that's okay?
Yeah.
So first, starting with, I'd like to make a motion for the OPM group to recreate the CIP list, different from what we've had in the past, to capture all identified deficiencies that you have told us that exist. So that would be the list that we would be presenting to RIDE.
I think what's a little challenging for us is, you know, we weren't hired to kind of do a whole overall code review and total review of every facility in a deep way. So to create a list that goes item by item of all the deficiencies is a pretty long list.
Like we just say, you know, bathrooms need to be renovated. It could be some code thing, could be some just, you know, wear and tear. It could be some other
So it's a question of
deficiency.
how detailed it's going to be in terms of the message that we're putting on a list, you know what I mean? Like, I think people are, you know, a lot of times it's sort of a shopping list in a way, right? And that's kind of a nice way to see it, and I understand that. But the shopping lists are a little misleading, frankly, you know, and, what we think the shopping list avoids is understanding the complete picture of what these buildings actually look like, and the number of deficiencies, whether it's energy related, code related, safety related, you know, security related. You know, it doesn't give you the total picture in a sense, right? I mean,
It also doesn't necessarily connect, like if you have a roof job, you might also have ceiling tile replacement, mechanical unit replacement, other things all at the same time, but you might not prioritize those the same. So you might have part of a job that's further down the list, but it really needs to be most
So
efficient.
what we're gonna need to do is figure out how to convey that information somehow in a way that creates line items that aren't you know, this is often, door handle is broken, cost for new door handle. You know, faucet in restroom 220 needs replacing. If we give you a list like that, the list would be sort of endless, right? We just wanna be able to say, the restrooms are under, you know, don't meet code because of clearances or other issues, and the bathroom needs to be fully renovated. And when you renovate the bathroom and make it code compliant, it's gonna be too small because you can't get the clearances necessary. So it actually has to be enlarged, and it's gonna impact the surrounding areas.
So
Or you
let me-
need to create additional restrooms elsewhere.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion, and maybe Sam, you could help guide me here. I'm gonna withdraw my motion and explain what I meant was, we have a current CIP list that is not this. It's very underperforming. We need to get a building subcommittee, just an internal agreement on this committee that you all can go forward with putting our stage 2 CIP list together for RIDE. So however I need to word that, I will make that a motion. Steve, were you gonna say something?
I just have a question, and given I've never been in most of these buildings, I'm new to this, but I'm gonna ask a lot of questions because
Please.
I need to know. So, you know, what's the driving factor, for example, for Quinnesset or Stony? Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? You go in the building, it's like, you look around, you look at the roof. You know, we have things we have to do because the students can't have a leaky room. You have things we have to do because of code compliance, but if they're not in compliance now with ADA, they haven't been in compliance for 10 years.
Sure.
15 years since that law was enacted.
Sure.
So I guess I'm trying to find out, what's the root problems we're trying to solve in each building? Like, we as a community, what do we want what's the student experience we're trying to have? And like, so the walls. The walls, we want students to have classrooms with walls. The students really won't benefit day to day from having a sprinkler system. Obviously, we want them to have a sprinkler system. Fire suppression is important. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how we get to $10 million for, like, I'm just picking one Stony, I have no preference in these schools, and like, what's the job, what does that project look like? You talk about bringing the down to the,
Maybe go
Structure.
back to
Stony.
it's just, I'm having a hard time envisioning,
I wish we.
what's the problem we're trying to solve from, like, what is the community law,
problem-
which is probably less code stuff.
I think the problem that the town has been trying to solve is that you have these are all open class, there's no class,
Yeah.
it's all open.
Yeah.
So noise, security, safety,
Yeah,
intrusion, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I could
Go ahead.
interject 1 second, you know, RIDE had for a long time a three-spoked approach of warm, safe, and dry. And now we're gonna add in a fourth spoke, which is educational improvement. So you wanna have the mechanical system working, you wanna have the safety factor in lockdown situations or other situations where the rooms are contained. You don't wanna have a leaky roof. And then educational improvements, you wanna talk about how education is changing from a lecture-based to a project-based learning system, how you have breakout spaces. You're dealing with a school that's 40, 50 years old, and the teachers have adapted to use it that way. And I think, one thing I just wanna say real quick, and this is, I'm trying not to pander, but your schools have had incredibly good numbers in performance, and that's an asset to the town.
It's
to
good
the-
learning happening.
Yeah, the teachers, the environment, despite the buildings being tired, there's still good teaching happening in that environment. And we just wanna help bring that forward, you know, the administration's looking at how you're gonna be teaching another 20 years from now. That's also a factor in this, and that's what RIDE is looking at, is that we don't wanna just pay for fixing windows and doors and roofs. We wanna be able to improve the kids' experience, how the education is delivered. And so we're trying to balance all that with that, and, you know, renovating this entire area for Stony Lane, would not only enclose the classrooms and create a media center, but also is gonna, you know, and help the bathrooms, but it's also gonna have breakout space, other spaces.
But you may decide that you don't need to enclose the classrooms and spend the funds in another way. And that goes back to your question. You know, where are you trying to get to? What's the goal, right? And that's what you all are we're gonna help you try to understand the condition of the buildings, the code and deficiencies that we see, whether they're energy or otherwise. And we're gonna, give you all the knowledge that we can, but at the end of the day, you're gonna decide how to spend the funds that you have. Be it roofs, classroom, create new walls to create enclosed classrooms. That's what you're gonna tell us.
It will be helpful for me again, and again, I'm doing too much talking, someone tell me, but, understanding, you know, if the educational goal is to enclose these classrooms, better learning environment for the children, what does that trigger? If we do that, what do we have to do? Does that mean we have to, because of code, we pull a permit for that, do we have to come into compliance with bathroom sizes, turn radiuses, radii, things of that nature? Or, you know, where does the thread go if we start doing what we want from an educational perspective? Because I understand that roofing touches a lot of different elements of the building, but again, it's kind of straightforward, stay dry.
Once
roof.
we're spending, if you think about it proportionally, once we're spending this amount of money relative to the entire structure,
You're tripping everything.
we're tripping codes that say, now you're gonna improve the whole thing.
That's kind of what I'm driving towards.
And what could happen, for example, like in Stony Lane, typically we would come in and say, look, we just think you need a sprinkler system, right? That would be our first,
That was the gut reaction.
that would be
in
our
the-
gut
in the
reaction.
couple,
It doesn't
yeah.
have a sprinkler system, should have a sprinkler system. It's gonna help with various, it's gonna help us keep a lot of the existing conditions. However, we might look at this and say, well, there's not good water pressure at Stony Lane. So if we need a sprinkler system, we're gonna need a fire pump, and a fire pump is
Where do
gonna
you put that
need a
room?
generator. So we'll have to analyze this step by step. But there is a way to make the improvements, most likely without adding a sprinkler system. That doesn't mean we wouldn't recommend a sprinkler system, it just means we might be able to do a lot of things to get around it. And there is a state law, I have to remember what.
You found it.
I found, yeah, I think there's a way, there are some ways, I think everyone wants you to have a sprinkler system in these facilities of this size and type. But there are ways to perhaps not have one, as you don't, okay, at present.
I think, like, one thing is in these schools, a lot of them are one story, there's a lot of doors out of these open classrooms directly to the exterior. If you have doors directly to the exterior, you don't need sprinklers, but then that creates a security issue. You have 25 doors around the building instead of 5, so it's a weighing every
And if-
option.
What happens with the open classrooms, even if there's partitions there, there's leakage around the partitions, they can see exit signs over the partitions at some level. There are doors going directly outside from the open areas, that students can either exit into what looks like a corridor, or they can exit directly outside. As we create individual classrooms, and we're gonna need two means of egress from the classroom, and so a lot of times you would have a door directly outside. But as you look, we don't have enough doors relative to walls, right?
Yeah.
So this is where we start adding doors and, you know,
My
all that
fear
goes
is
with
that
it.
all of a sudden the entire building is pink.
Yeah, could be possible
Well,
near.
I think a point that we're trying to make is that many of these buildings are tired, and, but we've done substantial renovations to similar schools in Smithfield, and, you know, we do think it's important to know where you're going. Stony Lane is a perfect example. If you create all these classrooms, you're gonna have classrooms without any daylight. You're gonna have no windows outside, which which happens sort of now, but it's only gonna be made worse when you add walls. So if the future is, we're gonna maintain the population in this building, and some of the classrooms for certain grades are not gonna have any windows where students are spending all their time, right? We would argue well, maybe we need to reduce the population in the school, so we don't have so many classrooms without windows. In a plan that has the art room and the music room up north there in the beige, at some point we'd say, well, the music room, maybe that doesn't need windows. And we start to move the music room down, turn beige into classrooms, you know what I mean? So it's holistic. We've gotta look at the whole building by building, and help you understand what it can do, and then once you understand what it can do reasonably, you tell us if that works for you. I would argue that if the long-term plan is for the next 10 or 15 years, is to have 4 or 5 classrooms, more maybe, without any daylight, that doesn't seem like a good plan, if I could be blunt.
I just wanna add this, Michael. First of all, I wanna thank you for your work on this and for the group's work. I'm gonna echo what Sam said earlier. It's really helpful, very clarifying, to provide this information in a very short amount of time, and I think it's the benefit of all of us that we're hearing this tonight. I'm hearing this more on a higher level, right? What I'm hearing here is that, in a general sense, we have, obviously a finite amount of money that we have to pull from. We have significant amount of need in our buildings, in all of our buildings. And we right now could be going down a path with what we're talking about here, where we are set to allocate a significant sum of that money into a relatively small and not necessarily efficient use, right, based on this. So I look at this as let's move forward in a way, and I'm gonna emphasize the point on the agenda today about the long-term plan, about how can we use this to open up a conversation around vision that we have for our buildings, and what is the most efficient and effective use of the funds that we have at our disposal on the CIP side of things to move that vision forward. We know it's not gonna bring us to realize the full vision. We know that. But how do we start getting there, and how through this process can we use it to continue that conversation of where are we going, what is the most effective way to move forward in this process? And I think this is a good start to this, because this is a very clear, I think, very clear and very identifiable beginning.
If I can jump in, agreed, but round and round we go for decades on this. This is where we start. We start, and motion needs to be made. The only way we move forward with this process is if we make a clear motion to task the superintendent, along with whatever resources he needs, to come up with an infrastructure and teaching and learning plan for the next X amount of years, 20 to 30 years in our district. And because we can sit here and we can talk about it, and people have been talking about it, what is our long-term plan, our long-term strategic plan, our long-term infrastructure plan, our long-term teaching and learning plan. Our vendors cannot do anything going forward until we give them direction. So do we wanna invest in these buildings? And if we do, we need to forge ahead. If we don't wanna invest in some of them, we need to pull things off that were just, for instance, gyms or something that, why are we going to put a gym in when we may end up tearing the building down in 5 or 10 years? I think it's a very straightforward answer. It's not fun, we don't have the money for all these buildings, But that's the only way to move forward, and the only way to start it is with a motion, which I was planning on making this evening.
So if I can say one thing on that, I think that's a great point. And I'm gonna go down a whole different rabbit hole, so I wanna come back out of it quick. But my point is that, I think that when we're talking about that, we have I look at it 3 different buckets: the high school, the elementary schools, the middle school. High school seems like we're in relatively good shape. Elementary schools, you've given us a glaring concern here, which I wholeheartedly agree with, and I think a lot of people do, that we need a long-term plan to figure out how we're gonna spend the short-term money. Because to build a house, you gotta start with the foundation, and if the foundation's not solid, you're in trouble. Brings us to the middle school. We do know one thing. By vote of this community and by vote of this committee, we are going to have 2 middle schools. And so, wouldn't we want to at least focus some of this money into Davidsville? Because we know that, at least I think, tell me if I'm wrong, 20 years from now, when we visit North Kingstown, one thing's for sure, we're gonna have the high school and 2 middle schools, I think. And so, if that's the case, we need to be, because if you put money in Quinnesset, there's no guarantee that Quinnesset's gonna be there 10 years from now. Through redistricting, through it's an old school, through who knows. No guarantee Fish and Co's gonna be there. We know Davidsville's gonna be there. So at the very least, our CIP should be prioritized and focused on what can we do to bring Davidsville up to snuff, so that way it's not the have and the have-nots. What do we need to do in Davidsville to make it a legitimate 21st century middle school? And then, of course, the roofs, because you can't have leaky roofs. And so, I may be simplifying it, this is definitely well beyond my pay grade, but the way I'm looking at it is that we have our high school, we have to fix our roofs on our elementary schools, definitely, whether it's gonna be 5 or 10 years, and we have to focus on Davidsville, because we know we're going to have 2 middle schools 10 years from now. And so, that's where I'm sitting.
Your comments are noted, but before we do any of that, that's just a discussion for what our long-term plan is gonna be. But we haven't even decided that we wanna have a long-term strategy that going forward. So the absolute first thing we have to do is all come to, an agreement of whether or not we wanna have a 20 to 30 year plan, and whether or not we are willing to commit to that starting now, because.
I agree, I guess my point is, and then I'll come out of that, is that we have 2/3 of our 30-year plan already done. We know we have a high school, and we know we need 2 middle schools. So we can focus on 2/3 of our 20-year plan right now. It's the elementary schools that's the unknown. That's all I'm saying. So make sure that whatever we come up with, for the short term, from now until, we know we can focus on Davidsville. We know that every dime we put in there is gonna be money well spent. And so, I think the CIP has to focus on that. The CIP for September 15th is a little bit concerning at elementary schools, because I don't know what you put in there, because it seems like we have a lot of unanswered questions. You have to put it in there. I'm just, like I said, it's a rabbit hole that we're gonna come out of, but I think that 2/3 of our 20-year plan is done.
I think my point is, we haven't even voted on whether or not we wanna have a plan. So, you're ahead of us, is all I'm saying. We have to have an official, this is what we are going to task our superintendent with looking at. Because until we task him, he doesn't have to, we don't have to start looking into this. We can just sit around and talk about it.
But the task is just, correct me if I'm wrong, the task is just elementary school.
There will be, well, you mean as far as looking to the future?
Sure.
Because like you said, we know the high school's there and we know the 2.
Right.
But to Megan's point is, okay, but we have to say that, and we have to make sure we focus on that and put it in writing that demands action. That, okay, we now realize that we have that high school and we have those 2 middle schools, right? Making that an action point that cannot be brushed away or tended to in a little while, or 2 years or 3 years. I think by the motion Megan is talking about, it forces our hand collectively, as a town, as a school committee, as the administration of the school, to do the entire thing, not just 2/3, but we need that other third in there. So if you make your motion, it will sweep up the high school and the 2 middle schools, but also see that we pay attention to, or at least make a decision about what's gonna happen with the elementaries. So I think you're both right, it's.
Yeah, so the details of the plan can be hashed out later. But we just we haven't even agreed that we want to have a plan.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to ask the school committee, because this is where it has to come from, to task the superintendent to come up with an infrastructure and teaching and learning vision for the district for the next, I'm gonna go big, 30 years.
Say that, to come up with.
To come up with an infrastructure and teaching and learning vision for the district, and teaching and learning vision for the district for the next 30 years.
And I'm, again, you are on the same page. I'm gonna vote for the I'm gonna vote for the motion. My concern is that
Sorry, can you second it and then we can discuss?
I second the motion.
Okay.
So,
Discussion.
my concern is that the motion is just so general, but I'm just concerned where it goes from here with the school committee. So what I mean by that is that if I'm the superintendent and you gave that to me, I'm looking at a blank paper, and I'm gonna come up with what the vision is for our school department. And what I'm saying is that the superintendent has to realize that the motion is us realizing that 2/3 of the paper is not blank. So let's say the superintendent would do this. Let's say the superintendent does this and he sits down with the educators and realizes that the future is North Kingstown High School and one middle school. It's not an option. It's not an option. So why would we put him through that exercise? His hands are tied. We want him to come up with a future plan for the school, realizing that his hands are tied. The future plan includes the North Kingstown High School and 2 middle schools. And so now he needs to focus on the feeder system to those higher education. So I'm gonna vote for the motion, but I just wanna let you know where my concern is that if I were the superintendent and you gave me that task, I'm going to take the task. And the task is, he may come up and say, the future of this town should be 1 middle school. That horse has left the barn. So we can't, I don't think it's fair to give him that task. I think he needs to know that we know that we're really asking for elementary schools. And what you need to do with Davisville and what you do with the high school. But as far as the educational plan, the people have spoken, the educational plan for North Kingstown is 2 middle schools.
So would it be, because we're still in discussion, so I can say this, if I withdrew the motion and specified the exact same thing with 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and just left it at that, so just added that extra little piece, would people feel more comfortable with that motion? Like that language?
I was gonna vote for the original motion, but I am definitely more comfortable with that.
I mean,
But
are
that's
we
just me,
even,
so
we're
I'm
sure,
fine with that. I'm
yep,
fine with
cause we
that.
do already know it's gonna be 1 high school, and you're
And
right,
2
we do
middle
have 2 middle schools.
I was gonna say that the piece of paper that Ralph said, that piece of paper is already 2/3 filled out. So it becomes not an easy task, but an easier task. But to put it officially in a motion, say, hey, here's a page, 2/3 filled, we need the last third. Let's get busy.
Okay, so I will withdraw my motion, sorry Wendy, but don't erase it, cause I'm just gonna add some language. I will make a new motion to ask the school committee to task the superintendent to come up with an infrastructure and teaching and learning vision for the district. That includes 1 high school and 2 middle schools for the next 30 years.
And I'll second that.
But that was a good point, Ralph.
And again, I'm not gonna belabor, but I just don't, that he may think that 1 middle school is the right educational component, and that's not fair, because he's going to give something, somebody's gonna look back in his paper 20 years from now, and they're gonna say, why did you go to 2 middle schools? And he's gonna, he can't, it wasn't that fair to him, because maybe he thinks 1 middle school is the right answer, but we've already tied his hands, that's all I'm saying. So I just think that if I were the superintendent, I'd want those restrictions, so that way 20 years from now, someone can't criticize me. When everybody's doing 1 middle school, why did you do 2? You had a blank piece of paper, why didn't you say it? Because our hands are tied, that's all.
We're still in discussion.
Yeah, what would be the timeline?
Oh, on coming up with
The vision, yeah.
the vision, well, that's all dependent on what the vision even is. And, I mean, we're all gonna have to work with our vendors, and
Or is it a timeline for when you want them to come up with the vision?
Don't say that.
I'm asking for when, yeah, like, when we're asking to come
Like
up
a
with an
fund.
infrastructure and teaching and learning vision for 30 years, what would be would there be a recommendation to the school committee to place a generalized timeline on when the superintendent would deliver that?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm happy to take recommendations since I've been doing a lot of
Yeah.
talking.
Well, the only reason I ask is because, like, I can't help but have my mind go a little bit to our redistricting work, because there's a lot there that is seeping into this,
Yes.
for sure. And we spent the last year having very high-level discussions with our community around redistricting and conversations around that topic. And obviously, as we all know, it's a very hot-button topic. It's a very important topic. In our community, let us know that very loud and clear. We're gonna continue that work, we're gonna continue that conversation. But I know that there's no vision that's coming forward from our superintendent that's not going to have to incorporate, obviously, the work of that group.
What's the deadline for that group?
There's none. There's no real deadline per se on it. There's goals that we've set, you know what I mean? We've set goals around when we would like to bring forward, reach certain benchmarks with making a proposal. Again, we set some of those last year, but then based on some of the feedback we received, we kind of hit the pause button a little bit, and we're resetting to have more conversations and hopefully take different steps and things like that. That's why I guess what I'm saying is, I think we all know this, it is somewhat of a fluid process. Any sort of visioning work that's gonna take place around 30 years into the future, around infrastructure and teaching and learning, super important and very exciting work, but also it's a quite fluid process that's gonna have to involve the input from a lot of different
So I
stakeholders.
might recommend a preliminary report of some type due by year end.
Okay.
School year or fiscal,
School year, I was thinking.
not calendar year and
No,
not
I'm thinking calendar year.
December,
Yeah.
Oh, December?
yikes.
Too soon?
I think you're
I'm a
probably
facilities guy,
six,
so, you know, from an education standpoint.
You're like, I could have it done tomorrow.
I would say 6 months, just as and I know that's a very
Oh, that's-
arbitrary measurement,
yeah.
but you would have to engage the whole process, right, which is not what you currently have at the table with you, certainly available from the team members that you have here. And then it involves not just the planning and the design side, it requires all the conversations, Rob, that you're saying about, that you're having about redistricting, about visioning, about, you know, all these different elements, and those are gonna take some time. And there's gonna be community outreach, engagement, and all those kind of things that have to happen along with it. So I think 6 is probably your minimum, and it could go longer just depending on, Rob, to your point, you get to a pivot point of some realization within a focus group, and then all of a sudden you go this way, right? Because for all the right reasons maybe, but so you've gotta have that ability to kind of iterate through somewhat of an organic process, but certainly there's, you know, you can get to team members and you have team members that can be part of that, or you supplement or whatever that would be. And again, there's gonna be non-planning and design professionals that are equally part of that discussion. Maybe they're in-house, maybe they're community members, maybe they're leadership, you know, that's in this room, or whoever that might be.
I would say a year, for sure. I mean, it'll take a month just to get it on paper and on.
Just to get an idea.
Yeah, I think having a checkpoint in before then would be good, though. I think that you wanna have some sort of, you know, chunked out process where we're getting
Preliminary
checkpoints at
report or
different,
something.
yeah, exactly.
Preliminary
If I
steps.
might,
Right.
the implementation of whatever that plan happens to be is likely to take a long time.
Oh, yes,
Right.
yes.
So getting the plan sooner is gonna be helpful to implementing the improvements sooner. So if you could do it in 6 to 10 months,
Yeah.
you know,
And I would just say, well, how does that inform your CIP too, right?
Exactly.
'Cause-
I was
Well,
gonna
that's
make
the
that
biggest
point.
thing,
Yeah,
is,
so
you know.
there's, if you took the tack of,
circular.
you know, focus on DMS and then focus on warm, safe and dry everywhere else, that could be a tack. It could be still put everything in, understand that there's gonna be a lot of things below the line that will not happen, but at least you've got a comprehensive list. Or is there some other pivot? And by the way, we have like no time left. So, cause while we think it's September, the team, and this includes Tina on her side, they have to get information for the cost estimators 4 weeks before we even hit the print button for the submissions to RIDE. So that really consumes, now it doesn't mean that things aren't happening in that time frame, but I think there has to be a lot of soul searching probably in the next, I'd say 7 to 10 days around what is it that truly wants to be in the CIP part of this application. And it may be that you make a decision, then you have to kind of course correct later, and that, you know, if it's an informed decision, at least it's an informed decision. But
We have had other districts that have course corrected exactly as they move into stage 3, and they've had more time to look at the vision that you're looking at. You might suddenly find out 6 months down the road in schematic design or something in stage 3 that you have to switch a little bit or something, but there is a certain amount of things that you've identified the entire time, the roofs, other, health and safety, the secure vestibules, things that you need short-term.
And they're, I'm gonna say this respectfully,
Yeah.
relatively light-lived for a stage 2 submission.
Correct.
Right,
Yes.
to get them in.
Yes.
If you start to get into more heady stuff around, do you do the classroom separation, do you not do the classroom separation? Does DMS get more enhancements than
Yeah.
it currently has, which is very little, right? Those, I think, are where you get into some complexities of, like, you gotta pick a lane on some of those things quickly in order for the team to be able to develop them quickly and then go out and get the pricing and then get the package together.
And again, they might be on there, but they might be a priority too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they might be on there and the total is 100 million, I don't, you know, whatever it is, right? But, yeah.
And I would think you would also wanna know how RIDE feels about what are their sticking
Yeah,
points.
yeah, cause they're gonna say, great, but
Educational.
But, yeah,
ed enhancements are still, need to be on par with all the other items that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I wanna just also reiterate this point as well. I agree with Ralph a lot on this in terms of the DMS focus. I really think that's an important, I just wanna go on the record saying that, cause I think that is really an important part of moving forward in this process. What we've learned here, you know, from this and knowing exactly the fact that the community very strongly said that they wish to continue with 2 middle schools. We wanna make sure that, you know, we are investing properly to make sure those facilities both, reflect the vision that we have. So I just wanna say I agree with that as well.
Okay. If I may, Sam, to your point, a course correction, you said within 7 to 10 days now, I think that's right now. Right now, we have to make a course correction at this meeting, at this time, and vote on it. I think what you presented there, Ashley and Mike, is a clear indication that those walls are gonna have to wait. Those walls are gonna have to wait. We know the roofs. The roofs are number one. A strong first place vote for the roofs. Secondly, looking at DMS, you know, achieving some sort of parity with DMS versus the new Whitford Middle School. We have to bring that along. So we can't do the roofs and bring DMS up to where we want it to be and do that wall project. So I'm new to the district. I've been working here about 10 months. I hear and I see very effective learning taking place at these schools with no walls. Anybody here have kids that went through any of those wall-less schools? How'd they do? Pretty good.
Grandkids count.
Right?
Kids are doing
Great.
good.
So,
They did very
to the
well.
point that was made for walls, for inclusive walls, they're probably very good points. But right now, with what we're faced with, it's time to course correct, okay? And I would like to make that recommendation forward to the school committee. And do we even have to get a school committee members? Do we have to bring our potential change of course to the school committee?
So, don't forget that we're still in the middle of a
Okay,
motion.
yeah, you're right, I'm getting ahead of myself, that's all. Thank you.
Sorry, well, because I wanna go on to talk about that, but can we vote?
Yeah.
Do we all remember what we're voting?
Is there any further discussion? Let's read.
Yeah, any further discussion?
Wendy, would you read the motion once more for us?
Task the superintendent to come up with an infrastructure and a teaching and learning vision for the district that includes 1 high school, 2 middle schools for the next 30 years.
Okay, we have to adjust that a little bit, because the way it has to go is it has to be the school committee. We're making the recommendation to the school
We'll
committee.
ask the school committee to task the superintendent.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say that,
No, you
yes.
didn't say that part. Okay.
Yeah, and then I had to run out. Did you decide on a timeline?
No.
Okay, all right.
No, I don't think we need a timeline right now. Except for the 6 months, but doesn't need to be in the motion.
Oh, okay, that's just, okay. Okay.
Is there any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, aye? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I think that's a great point. It'll help us move forward. Slowly, more quickly, but move forward nonetheless. Okay?
To your next question. Okay, it's complicated. So, we can't make a decision as to what the school committee approves in terms of the, projects that they decide that are important to do in terms of prioritization and cost. But that's what I was trying to get at with my motion to begin with, because we need a motion that internally we vote on to decide whether, and it doesn't have to, this motion doesn't have to go to the school committee, but we have to have an approval of an updated CIP list. Because by the way, Steve, you're just learning about all this, but actually the rest of us are too. DBVW, you only did your walkthrough, was it 2 weeks ago?
2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks ago, and the report came out maybe last week to us internally. So just so you know, this is all very new. These additional things are all new to us as well. So the whole idea with the wall thing, we're just going through this ourselves now and trying to figure out what we're going to do going forward. But in terms of what we need to do tonight, we have to come up with some sort of motion that states that we can move forward with a CIP list that you are going to be providing to RIDE. But, and maybe the word deficiency wasn't a good word, because honestly, that sounds like it's very in the weeds, like deficiency, you have to cover everything. I guess we just have to tell you that some of the things that you all found may not have been on the list that we as school committee members approved back in February.
Yeah.
So it's a new list, or it's an updated.
I would say it's a modification to what was
Yes.
submitted based on new information or additional assessment that's happening with the project team.
So maybe that's the motion, just a motion to.
Modify the CIP.
For the OPM to recreate, the modified, or modify the CIP
existing
list
CIP.
to capture all the additional information or concerns.
Yeah, cause I think, look, there's gonna be a lot of consistency with the items that were already in the previous study and submission, right? So that list is not, you don't just throw it all out.
Right.
There are new items that at least DBVW is coming across that they have brought forward. I think now we also have a possible adjustment of a focus, right? But I don't know if we can answer that question perfectly tonight, but I think we're hearing the direction from the committee that, hey, we're gonna have to we're gonna reshuffle no matter what. So I think that modification is really the key, again, depending on the language that you guys are trying to achieve for the objective that you're trying to get to tonight.
So OPM to modify the CIP list to address the new assessments that DBVW has provided in their report.
That's a lot. I would simplify it just to say, accept a modified CIP or something like that. You don't even have to list OPM or DBW, it can just be that is the direction.
Modify the CIP list.
Yeah, all right, I'll make the motion then, for the OPM to modify the CIP list.
Second.
Any further discussion?
All right, so who made
If I
that?
made a
Who
motion.
seconded it?
Me.
Rob Mezzanotte.
Rob Mezzanotte. Thank you.
Okay, do we have to discuss now, or we are?
Yeah, we can discuss it, if anybody has
Is there
any.
any further discussion based on, the motion?
Do we, set a timeline on this?
As far as achieving this new enhanced CIP?
Yeah.
I think it's gonna have to be for stage 2.
Yeah.
That's
So-
Before
so
September.
September 15th.
That's what I'm driving towards, cause.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's basically,
It's a week
basically
and
2
days.
weeks.
It's August 15th, gives you 4 weeks, you can't just have 4 weeks up to the date for the estimator, so it's really.
Yeah, I mean, we're submitting to the estimators the first week. of
First week of
August.
August. Yeah, makes
Now,
sense.
as you know, cause you're in the industry, right, like, things will happen between submission of
yeah.
estimator and, receipt of estimate, so it won't be perfected, but I think what the goal would be is to come back to this group, ideally in your August meeting, which we know is right around the corner, because we're halfway through July already, with a much more informed update, because the team, like, look how much they did in 4 weeks, imagine how much they can do in 8 weeks. And also be informed by our weekly working group that will really kind of hopefully hone in on some of the things that we talked about tonight to say, okay, here it is, we've kind of wrestled it into these guardrails, and this is what we are suggesting to the committee goes into the stage 2 submission. And again, that won't be the last bite at the apple even before the stage 2, because we can have another meeting, I mean, we can meet as often as we need to make sure that this thing is in the right place for the submission to RIDE. To Ashley's point too, this is scratching the surface. Stage 3 is the much more detailed process we can get into, and things could still fall off or come on as long as they were in the macro list that was submitted as part of stage 2.
I just wanna make sure, so I think I know the answer to this, but I just wanna, so this ask is not gonna put you in a tough spot as far as like the timeline, getting it done and things of that nature and conflicting with, like, no, really though, I mean, like, because.
It's getting harder and harder, Rob, I'll be totally transparent, and I think if there was a honing down, like, the easiest thing in the world would be for you guys to say, focus on Davisville Middle School and roofs, go, right? The BBW then would have a very direct task to try to knock this stuff out. I mean, look, we were behind the 8 ball already from higher. So I think every week is eroding quickly, even though there's a lot of stuff happening.
Well, 'cause
It's getting more and more challenging, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think we should be mindful of that. Like, I think this is a really important ask that we're putting forward here. I think it's important that we do what we're asking to do, like it is, but I also wanna be mindful of the fact that, like, we don't wanna stretch ourselves thin to the point that we're missing other stuff that's really important, or maybe shortchanging things that aren't necessarily, that have to be put aside, if you will, you know?
Yeah, and I'll defer to Michael, cause he's, they do a lot more of the work than we are.
No, I
we're
think
the
Sam's
quarterback.
point is a good one, you know, if we spend more time on a certain thing, we can do a better job, if you will, right? We can look at everything and keep it at a very high level, that's in terms of design and budgeting and, you know what I mean? Which is, if we're tasked with maintaining, you know, looking at sort of everything, if you will, it's gonna be at a high level.
I think you're
Go
gonna,
ahead,
I think
yeah.
the groups that you guys have weekly, it's gonna identify some very effective low-hanging fruit. You might be able to find 1 or 2 improvements at each school while focusing on Davisville Middle School and doing all the roofs. That way, every school does get a light touch, and you're not putting a ton of good money into bad.
But it does go back to understanding your priorities as it goes back to teaching and learning, right? How important is the media center, right? What do you have now
Very
in
important.
these schools?
Yeah.
How important is it?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna, and then thinking forward, if you don't start now with the media, with building your media centers, you're not likely gonna have them for a while. So you may decide, well, that's a top priority. We need to give each school some level of improvement as it relates to media center, right? We don't need a gym. We'd love to have a gym. It needs a gym, but media centers are really key. And then based on that, we can look at each school, help come up with a quick concept of how that could be achieved, do a little budgeting maybe roughly, and then come back and say, well, if you wanted to do media centers in every school, we had to do roofing and deal with some other code or safety improvements. Here's a rough order of magnitude of what that is. We've got a little left that should help, you know, what's left maybe goes to the middle school, you know. But I think we can, as we meet over this and you think more about your key priorities, your number 1 priorities, we can help you come up with a plan to spend that money in the best way.
RIDE a few years ago had a surplus,
If I could,
Yeah,
while I'm
go
thinking
ahead.
about it, you know, someone brought up, well, you've had bathrooms that are not, that don't meet ADA and other accessibility codes, and they've been that way for a long time. Chances are, you probably could do it for a bunch more years, you know. It doesn't mean you should, it doesn't mean something won't occur, but at some point, it is something that could be corrected should someone raise an issue, right? You could then come up with emergency funds and address deficiencies perhaps as it relates to a toilet room or something else, right? It's a priority, you'd like to do it, but it doesn't necessarily fit in the monies that you have now. And if an issue did arise, where you had a particular student or parent or others
For teacher.
because you are teacher, thank you, you know, under the law, you are required to do certain things, but often when you're not cited, if you will, right? And that's true of fire codes as well. In Rhode Island, there is no grandfathering as it relates to the fire code. There's grandfathering for the building code a little bit, but there is no grandfathering for the fire code. So although someone hasn't gone in and done a deep dive and listed all the deficiencies, that doesn't mean they don't exist, and it doesn't mean that an owner isn't responsible to correct them. Said a lot.
Going going back to what I was gonna hint at before, is that RIDE had identified, they had a surplus a few years ago, and they created something called the Facility Equity Initiative, and it hit a lot of the urban areas. It hit Woonsocket, Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, I think Warwick was in there. And what they did is they said you could put a very, I don't wanna say small amount of money, but an appropriately diminutive amount of money into a media center or a learning common or something like that, and you can have a real powerful impact on the schools. And that might be the short-term solution for the elementary schools while you take your year to look at the overall vision, you know?
We make a point a lot of times with clients about just painting, you know?
Yeah, painting is
in
a-
good color, you know, makes a happy space, you know? Sometimes it doesn't need, you know, is it gonna be the fanciest new schools? Well, maybe not, but it's amazing with a little bit of paint and good color selection and, you know, decent furniture, like.
Flooring maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it really does
It's not
change.
huge, but-
You can really, you know, we do a lot of graphic work, and it's amazing what a little bit of graphics, and you really can transform a place, you know, that has decent bones with small money.
And that's one thing I think we wanna identify, is that these schools aren't collapsing or falling down. They're safe schools in that capacity. And you have good bones, you have value in the buildings that you have. It's not like
Some
you.
more than others.
Yeah, some more than others, but it's not like you have 120-year school, or, you know, or something like that. You've already moved beyond those.
Yeah, structurally sound.
Structurally sound. So it, you know, that's part of what that vision's gonna look at.
But we can work through this with you,
Yeah.
I think, over the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Well, and I would just like to say to your point that, and I've told
Ed's
you
gone
all
back.
this,
Ed's on vacation.
that we are fully aware of what you came into and what you've just discovered and the timeline we're up against, the schedule we're up against. I mean, the reality is, Rob,
get there.
the only reason that we have to ask them, you know, to kind of pressure them is just because we have to be able to submit this stuff to RIDE, you know, by September 15th. So, and then the priorities come after that.
No, absolutely,
So-
and I agree with that, Megan. I think that given what we have in front of us, given the timeline we have, I think it's important that we do have to make some decisions, right? I think it's important that we have to make sure that we acknowledge that some decisions have to get made about what we see moving forward, about how this plan is gonna take shape and what we're gonna prioritize. Again, I think we're prepared to make those decisions, you know? And I think that this task will be easier to meet if that's the way we go.
Well, and I would just say too, so let's just speculate that your next committee meeting is on the 6th, which is your typical day, right, the first Wednesday of.
Building subcommittee, you mean?
Yeah, the building subcommittee meeting, so that is 3 weeks from today.
Sam, before you go any further, I was just gonna ask you, would it be more helpful for you to just push it back? I believe the school committee meeting in August, if we need to think that's the 19th. So if we pushed it back a week, would that be helpful for you all to get us more
I think it
stuff?
would, and I think what we can do is in the working group, really kind of immediately get to work on this.
Yeah.
At a minimum, that would be the next reporting out step, and whether it's on the 6th or the following week. And again, I think cause it's both the Perkins Eastman team and the DPW team making sure that they're getting the feedback loop in order to get in. But I think by then we can be coming back with hopefully a collaborated, informed discussion around that prioritization, especially with the discussion tonight. And then that's a rollout at that meeting, and there may be another meeting right after that, right, where we have to do another iteration, so, but I think that's a realistic timeframe, Michael, I think,
Yeah, I think so.
for you guys to kind of formulate.
My only concern would be the estimate after that.
Yeah, and so I'd say right now, I would say let's hold the 6th
Yeah.
as a placeholder, cause that's your normal date, right? And then have the ability to pivot, or maybe it's the 6th and
Okay,
the
two.
following week, right? Cause if nothing else, it's a reporting out of, even if it's in process, because that'll allow you guys to then get stuff going.
I would
Same
argue,
with
get it on
Perkins.
the calendar, get it on everyone's calendar, and we can always go or not go, or
Okay.
whatever, right?
Depending on.
But that's 3 weeks from now, so it's like luxurious based on what we've done so far.
Well, that will also give us time to get RIDE's feedback in some of this as
Right.
well, because that's an important
Okay.
part, because our priorities are our priorities, RIDE's is RIDE's priorities.
And
we
Keely
need
will
that
then be
feedback.
back in the loop too.
Right,
Cause
she'll be back and.
We've had RIDE at, 2 meetings so far, which has been really valuable. So we're checking in with them on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis to ensure that we're not getting so far off target that they don't come back and, when you submit and then they say, you missed the mark again. So I think all those items, Rob, to your point, are pretty valuable to kind of make sure this is an informed discussion going forward.
And I think the one thing you can look at as a community is that, every community in Rhode Island has the same problem. You have a lot of schools that were built from the 50s to the 70s during the baby boom. And now you're stuck with, what do we do with them? How do we fix them? What do we do? And, look to some of your neighbors that have already done this. And, like we've talked about our clients that we've done and different models with that, and we could be happy to share that, but there's definitely different ways to go about this.
We've been doing media centers, for example, in Pawtucket.
We did, that was why I brought up the facility equity initiative, we did that in
For kind of smaller
Pawtucket.
money,
It was like
I think
4
people are
million,
pretty
5 million.
happy. Yeah.
Are we still in a motion? I
Yes,
think we might still be in a motion.
yes, you are.
So can we take a vote, please? Is that okay?
No, it's appropriate.
Wrong motion.
Wendy, would you read the motion once again?
OPM to modify the CIP list.
The existing.
It is.
See.
Seems so simple.
Oh,
Yeah.
modify the existing.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see.
So, can I make a motion?
No.
It's my motion night. To move up item 13, just since we've already been talking about it, the next meeting
That's a
date,
great idea.
so we can, okay, so I need someone to second that, please.
Second.
All right. Can we vote on?
Yes, go ahead.
No, well, you just call.
Oh.
You can call.
All in favor of the motion to move item 13 up to the next? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so I just to clarify, we're gonna do August 6th, will be our next meeting date?
Correct.
So just for the record, so I will be out of town. You still should have the meeting. I'd like to let you know that for quorum purposes.
Okay.
If you have any
Thank you.
concerns, but I will be out of town the 6th.
Very good.
And, Kenny will be back by then.
Yeah, I think.
Rob, you're very excited.
No, I
You just facial it up.
Chris.
No, I hope,
Chris,
I
I
hope,
might be tied up on August 6th.
Okay.
I just don't wanna,
Just for quorum.
I know Kenny's recovering, we anticipate it, I just wanna make sure, we hope he is,
Yes, okay.
you know.
So let's say August 6th, and then if there's a quorum issue, we'll have to adjust, but
Do you wanna put one in the books for August 13th as well?
we probably should.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion?
Do we have to?
No,
Do we
we're
have
in
to
the
make
motion.
a, I don't know, do we have to make a motion
No,
for?
we're also gonna put a
schedules?
meeting on the books for the 13th.
Yeah, we don't have to make that.
In the interest of time, folks, I'm gonna table the rest of the agenda with the exception of item number 6, where we'll have some discussion about, Whitford Middle School construction. I make a motion to table the agenda, with the exception of item number 6.
Second. Oh, so moved, sorry.
No, that's us.
Who seconded it?
Ralph, did you say?
Oh.
Second.
We're
All in favor of, tabling the agenda with the exception of number 6? Votes?
Aye.
In favor. Historical considerations of Whitford Middle School construction. We learned recently that we are going to be mandated by the state to have a above ground and a below ground historical inspection, for lack of a better term. Below ground actually refers to an archaeological inspection. Above ground has to do with references to the existing building and the surrounding areas, and carrying over historical significance from this existing building into the new building of some nature. So, with that said, I'd like to invite Tina from Perkins Eastman to kind of lay out where we're coming with, which will lead up to, with regard to Whitford Middle School. Just a general quick update, and then we can talk about specifically the archaeological and above ground interests.
Okay, and we have some of our latest slides as well. Okay, so this slide reviews some of the things that we've been doing in the last, since May. And as Sam had highlighted, we've been having these weekly meetings, and one of the greatest things has been that RIDE has been part of those, and that's been actually extremely helpful. We really appreciate the framework that they've put forward as we move forward. So as Chris just mentioned, so this is just the meetings that we've recently had that are of significance. That July 7th, we did meet with Historic. We had a call with Elizabeth Toten, and it is interesting, they do divide that ground line, and Elizabeth's above grade, so she's looking at the building. And then Charlotte Taylor is the archaeologist, and she's looking at below grade. So a few of the things that Elizabeth went over with us is that once an MOA is established, MOU is established, some of the things that they'll be looking for is they do want us to have the existing Whitford Middle School photo documented by a historian. The other piece in this is that she does want to have intermittent reviews with the team, and that would include, any RIDE submissions. They want to also receive that. But we'll also have these intermittent submissions. We're going to establish some kind of cadence to that. And then we'll probably follow up with a phone call to kind of do a little bit of a page turn. What they will be looking for is an interpretive display incorporated into the design. And early on, many months ago, we had talked about those different kinds of ideas about maybe there's a room in the space, maybe we take some of the artifacts from the existing building and incorporate it into the design. We've also talked about maybe there's a place on the field where we have some kind of marker of the four corners of the existing building, those kinds of things. And then she also highlighted that when a school is at the high school level, it's great to have some of the students involved with developing some kind of history. And one could imagine, we didn't discuss this at the meeting, but a QR code that then brings you to some student project. And she said at a middle school level that could be something that would be interesting. So that there's lots of opportunities for engagement, and I think that that's a really important piece. I think we all feel that way, and that will continue to be developed, and we'll continue to have meetings with her. And then with Charlotte, the archaeologist, she did say that a survey, so that look at below the surface, an archaeological survey does need to happen. And one of the reasons that has been triggered is apparently south of Phillips Street, there was some findings of, and I may not be using all the right vocabulary, but Native American relics that were of significance. So because of that, they want to make sure that this site doesn't have that. Recently we're working to see if that archaeologist can be under our umbrella versus direct to the school or to the district, and that's being sorted out because certainly we want to get that started as soon as possible. In addition to that, there's other subgrade investigations that will go on, and one of them is geotechnical, which is looking at what are those soils in terms of bearing, and then also looking at where's that groundwater line and how that affects the filtration of stormwater, and all those other things that will inform the site civil design as well as the building foundation design. As you may recall, we did have preliminary geotechnical work done, and that allowed us to, at that point, based on the information that we had, assume, although further investigation is necessary, that standard foundation and footings were okay for this project, which was great. That was really good information. But now we have to build on that and continue that. One more subsurface investigation is related to the geothermal. So it is a little bit of a different kind of boring or ground investigation, and that's related to the geothermal wells that are planned for the net zero energy. So then moving on, I am going to just go up to June 27th and July 1st. We had a really productive, I'm going to call it the two-part programming meeting with a group. And what we wanted to do is, as you know, for the last submission, the stage 2 addendum number 3 submission, per the urging of RIDE, we looked at the redesign of the building, and that we developed that compact 3-story academic wing, and with the 1-story gym. And after we had more reviews to just look at that was done quickly, and we wanted to review the program, so we did get some feedback on that. We also knew that we wanted to rotate the building, so we just have some of those slides that I thought we
Great.
quickly go through.
Please do.
Okay, so I will go to the next. So this is just going over the program, so just as a reminder, we always like to show what are those materials that we're looking at. This the image that you see to the right, actually, you know what, I am gonna stand up. So this is just that list of all the spaces that are in the building, and then it lists all the areas. So that was one of the materials that we were looking at. And just, I'm gonna quickly go over some of the things that were adjusted. We looked at that, 7th and 8th grade, the classroom, we made one of the classrooms a little bit larger so it could also serve for science. We added a wellness room for lactation. We pulled, one of the big significant things is when we did that 3-story academic wing, that was extremely efficient, and we had this music and the band and chorus on the first floor. So that worked from an efficiency standpoint and achieved what we wanted, RIDE. But actually in the meetings, it was highlighted, it would be better if that was pulled out, which was similar to what we had in the original design, which works towards 21st century learning because you can have the right height for the space, as well as you're bringing it away from the quieter areas. Certainly all the architectural details that would have been involved to mitigate sound between floors would have been employed, but it is still always good to get those louder activity spaces away from those quieter instructional spaces. We brought OT/PT closer in proximity to the gym, and then we confirmed a few things. We talked about how all the administration will be located centrally. We don't need to it's a smaller school, it's not like a large high school, so sometimes in a larger high school you might have, a remote assistant principal. And then finally, we did talk about resource rooms. We have one per grade level. Ideally, there would be 2, but we talked about how maybe that can be handled with scheduling. And so that's where we left that. Those are the things that we went over. And actually, would you mind? Thank you. So just very quickly, and I'm gonna so we went over the teaming. There were a couple of adjustments. Should I just go ahead
Sure.
and start, or you wanna go ahead?
Yeah, it's okay. So we looked into the 6th grade teaming specifically, projecting ahead to WMS, and 6th grade presents sort of more of a unique challenge because in 7th and 8th grade we can do a looping team that groups between the 2 of them. In 6th grade, we do feel it is important to have a teaming model, and that is it's educationally a valuable model. It's a best practice for the middle school level. Middle school is kind of that time when we want to give students a little more independence, but also preserve some level of personalization because they still are not, at the age where we want to fully in a high school model. And so the teaming model is the best approach that we feel that we want to take. The size of WMS does present a challenge with that, but we looked ahead with the 6th grade and we see the teaming model taking shape more of a modified form with a team of 4 and then a team of 2. And then we would work out like the teacher assignments and certifications and whatnot to make that work within that level. But we do have the goal, we project to have a teaming model for all the students at Woodford Middle School.
And knowing that every year the enrollment changes, not only
Yes.
for the whole school, but for each grade, it doesn't always divide equally.
Correct. So enrollment numbers are, thank you Tina, because the enrollment numbers are important to factor in because you're right, from year to year, there's gonna be different
There's
flows
gonna
and
always be difference.
upticks and declines and things of that nature just based on the year.
Yep, so thank you. So then this really becomes our roadmap as we develop the design. So then we'll go to the next slide, thank you. So just to kind of go through, so as, for that last stage 2, addendum number 3, we had this academic wing that goes up and down the page with the 1-story spaces to the side. And so this was that a very efficient 3-story academic wing, allows the whole, we were calling it 3-story compact design. And if we go to the next slide, we break it down into very simple pieces. So as I mentioned, that whole discussion about music, it was a very important move to take that out. So we looked at that. The other thing that is important for us to consider is we're always looking at high performance. And in a building that has an academic wing, its orientation to the sun has a great deal of effect on its performance. Not only does it affect the users in the building, like I'm sure all of us have experienced being in a space where the glare from outside, we just kind of accommodate it, but it is actually a stressor because it can actually make it so that you can't see your computer screen, or the sun's in your face and you can't see the chalkboard or the whiteboard and all, that kind of thing, as well as the teachers. So having an east-west length orientation for the academic wing allows you the best control for glare. It also allows us to control, it decreases or it mitigates the kinds of loads that would otherwise be on the building. So that was an important consideration. So the next slide shows that we were able to do that and able to pull the music and the music room out. So what's great about this is you have the academic wing, east-west orientation, as well, and then we pulled out the music, which is band and chorus. That allows them to have the substantial kind of height that they need for that program, as well as pulling them away from those quieter instructional spaces. It also really works well with the site, and the other thing that we have the lens on every single move that we make is how is it that we can capture more savings. And one of the places that can capture savings is in everything but the site. So this move also, if we go to the next slide, you can see we continue to maintain the bus, and the bus being yellow, and the car traffic as separate, and their relationships to the new building. But what we've also looked at is how can we get rid of that curb cut. So on Terra Hill, I don't know if everyone remembers, that curb cut, number one, that costs money. Number two, its proximity to that light was always a little bit of concern. So what this new compact scheme does, when it's nestled up into the northern corner, allows us to shift everything a little bit. And we may not need to, so we could probably eliminate that's what we're looking at right now. Eliminate that curb cut, as well as maybe not, and I realize this is something that we all need to talk about a little bit more, but the existing softball field that is there today, maybe if we don't have to touch it immediately, maybe we don't, but we talk about having an alternate or something like that for a future development of that. It also potentially, we're not sure about this, depending on what site civil they may need to use it for something, but it could reduce the amount of area that, again, we'd have to check on this, but maybe that the archaeologist didn't have to survey if it was left. And then I think, is there one more slide? So then this is just the, were there any questions on the site? Just wanna make sure, no, okay. Actually, one last thing about the site I do wanna mention is that the other thing that this is not exactly the shape of that curve right now, but by preserving as much as possible the location of that drive does two things. Number one, it will save a little bit of money because whenever you're kind of reusing that same location, we're building on top of something that already exists. It also works favorably towards the phasing of construction that would have to occur. So there's going to be a period of time where you have two buildings, and that building does come down and you then build the fields, but having that in the same place facilitates that. We think that will facilitate the phasing quite well, which also translates into money, and then also if it ends up being in that same location, and at the end there's also some cost savings that we would probably be able to realize. Then the next slide.
Quick question on the site.
Yes.
Where are the geothermal wells?
So the geothermal wells, we're gonna be reviewing that again, but we initially, in the previous design, which you might not have seen, which was from.
I've seen it before.
Oh, you did? Okay, so that was that larger, it
Yeah.
was 2 stories. we had 80 fields over in this parking area. So we are going to be, going over that again. We're gonna have to develop a new plan on that. But we anticipate that it's probably gonna be in one of these areas. Often, the first choice is you end up putting it on, on the field, but we can't do that in
'Cause the
this case
building's
because of
there.
the, correct, exactly. So then we'll go to this sheet. So this is, we're working on this, we're still developing it. We are, that overlay of that coordination of, bringing the mechanical engineer and their shafts and that kind of thing is our next, piece, as well as, many other things. But this is, the 3 floors. You see the first floor has everything with the big box, we call them the big box, pieces, but they're the pieces that have, they're 1-story structure with a little bit of a higher roof. And then this, and then the 3-story academic wing that comes, through it. So one last thing I just wanna mention is we did maintain that same vertical, organization where 7th and 8th grade are on the top floor. And the 6th grade is on the 2nd floor with, the 1st floor with the administration, nurse guidance, and the library, art, all the special, most of the special spaces, and then we've already talked about music.
Thank you.
The end.
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Tina.
Okay. Well, any questions or, okay, all right, thank you.
Chair, I have one comment.
Shoot.
Item number 8 was the RFP for commissioning agent. That I believe,
We don't need any vote or anything
Okay.
on that,
great.
so we can hold off, we can touch on that later, or.
Thank you. Good.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep.
Having tabled the balance of the agenda, confirming our next meeting is August 6th, as well as August 13th for the one after that. Any of those items, contact me individually. I'd be happy to give anybody an update on the rest of this. We can move them to the next meeting as we see fit. Aside from that, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks.
Oh, okay, thank you.
How's everything going, all right?